Hey guys, it's me again, Brandon with Team Bad Decisions. We're here with Competitive Corner, our Monday show, and today I think we're going to cover a little bit of the new release stuff that came out for 9th edition, which is what a lot of people out here are covering it. But the spin that we're going to try and talk about is what each of these things mean for the meta of Warhammer 40k and what it means for what you could be seeing in your local game stores, your local shops, and some of the rules that are coming up. So I've got the community page behind me. We'll be going through and looking at some of the things that are coming up on the community page. The one I had right now is just the Genestealer Cult. They came out with this faction focus on Genestealer Cult. Genestealer Cult has always kind of had a niche role in the competitive meta where they had a lot of good stratagems to use, but it was very CP heavy. So you'd see some competitive Genestealer Cult builds bringing multiple brigades because they're cheap, and you could start with 20, 24 ish CP at a 2000 point level, and at that point level with 24 CP they would spend 8 to 10 in a burst getting one unit to do something extremely powerful. So from a 40k 9th edition perspective, that's going to get tailored down a little bit because they'll have 12 CP to start off at 2000 points, not 24, because they can't buy that extra CP through detachments. And then they'll get a slow burn of CP, the one per player turn or two per game turn, and they'll have to wait if they want to try and do something explosive. So I don't think you're going to see these hyper aggressive Genestealer Cult armies that have a huge CP battery behind them put on the field and then like thrown down someone's throat, burning 24 CP in the first two turns of the game because they're using every stratagem they have to throw at somebody. When you look at some of the things that they're talking about for how they play in the new edition, and they have the Brood Brothers, they're going to change up Brood Brothers a little bit. So Genestealer Cult have always been able to, and it's right up above me, they've always been able to take Astra Militarum units, and I think that it's going to stay the same for Genestealer Cult in 9th edition, but they're allowing you to take different units from the Astra Militarum book without messing up your Genestealer Cult faction. But it doesn't say that the Astra Militarum units themselves get a faction. So you don't, from what I'm interpreting, what they're putting out, you don't get to have a Genestealer Cult army take your Bane Blades, your Lehman Russes, you get to have that, but it doesn't get to keep a like a Astra Militarum keyword. So you won't see the Catachin tanks rerolling their number to hit fire in a Genestealer Cult army. Also, it gets kind of hard with your CP measuring, figuring all that stuff out when you're starting with half the CP that you would normally do on a competitive Genestealer Cult list. And then they're bringing out Perfect Ambush is something that they're showing as the stratagem or the released stratagem for Genestealer Cult. The Perfect Ambush, they cost 3 CP, so it's going to be a little bit on the pricey end when you look at CP usage. If you don't have any CP, it's going to take a game turn and a half to just be able to Perfect Ambush again. So given that Genestealer Cult probably is still going to be a CP spiky army, so you're going to want to use a lot of CP for multiple stratagems at once to make a very decisive hard hit. and then recoup that over time, survive, and then hit again after you've gotten some more CP back, which is beneficial to some of the ways they play. Before, I didn't see a lot of Into the Shadows play where Genestealer Cult players can remove their units from the table, then put them back later. But if they've spent a lot of their CP and they need those units in order to spend more stratagems later in the game, it may be beneficial. We may see more competitive meta play with removing those models from the table and then bringing them back later on to after you've accumulated some of that CP to spike for a late game win. Now, Genestealer Cults have also has Raise the Banner High. This is an example of how they're... Here, let me fix that a little bit. Raise the Banner High. It's an example of the new codex-specific mission objectives. So, it's called a progressive and an endgame objective. If you select this objective, then units in your army can perform the following action. Raise banner. One or more infantry units from your army can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase. Each unit from your army that starts to perform this action must be in range of a different objective marker that does not have one of your banners raised upon it. See below. A unit cannot start this action while there are any enemy units, excluding aircraft, in range of the same objective marker. So the objective cannot be contested when doing this. And then the action is completed at the end of your turn. So it sounds like your end of your movement phase, the unit is selected to start raising the banner. At the end of the turn, it finishes. So if you're in combat when this is happening and the unit is killed, the banner is not raised. Well, if you're in combat anyway, then chances are you are contesting the objective and not holding the objective. And the action is completed at the end of your turn. If this action is successfully completed, that objective marker is said to have one of your army's banners raised on it. The banner is removed if your opponent controls the objective marker at the start of any phase. You score 1 victory point at the end of each of your command phases and 1 victory point at the end of the battle for each objective marker on the battlefield that has one of your banners raised upon it. This is very interesting. So your banner is like having a unit there holding it. So an army that already has many models, many cheap models, and the ability to spring up, go away, and with the motorcycles, the jackals, some options for fast-moving units can run in, claim an objective. The jackals, the bikes, are not infantry, so they can't raise the banner, but a acolyte squad, a neophyte squad can come in, raise the banner, and then leave. Where other armies have to hold the objective with a body, they could hold the objective with a banner, which is interesting. Now, hey AJ, how's it going, man? How's your you were working on Death Guard, I think, last time we were talking, right? I'm glad to see that you like the emote. We're working on some other emotes. We have 2 other ones in store, and I think we're going to make all our emotes be able to go together, and they're going to form like 2 sides of a gaming table with like one guy laughing or one guy salty or one, so you can mix and match our different emotes together to build different gaming tables and have little, like, kind of like how the octopus emote all becomes one. You get to have a bunch of them put together. Yeah, I was really interested in it. And then we're going to try and duplicate some of the emotes that you already have, like Salt, but it'll just be like a salty dude at a table and angry at his 40k models. And then you could put him next to a dude laughing for LOL or something like that. But getting back to this, being able to hold an objective on a table without having to be there or having any of your models have to be there is really nice for matchups like Genestealer Cult against Knights, Genestealer Cult against Death Guard, Genestealer Cult against any army that is low model count. Being able to like just tag an objective, say this is mine, and then run away, make them chase you, make them have to come after you away from the objective, because they're already at a low model count army, not going to be able to keep up with you on the objective game. They're going to have to kill you to win. And if you could hold an objective and then hide somewhere else, it makes it very hard for them to kill you. A knight can't climb a building to kill you. So just go plant your flag and then run up 6 stories. Very, very interesting here. Now, it does say that an enemy unit can destroy the banner by holding the objective in any phase. So if they move close to the objective, then at the end of the movement phase they'll kill the banner, and they can then charge away or do some movement in the shooty phase or warp time away. They could do a lot of shenanigans that allow them just to burn your banner off and then run and do something else. But in and of itself, I think it's a great trick, and I'm interested in seeing what other objectives that are codex specific get to be. One second, I've been talking all day. Performing actions. So this is a general rulebook edition. So this isn't Genestealer Cult specific, but this was given out during the Genestealer Cult faction focus. Some rules let a unit perform an action. This represents the unit doing all manner of things, ranging from raising a banner, aiming or dismantling traps, searching for an objective site, hacking into a data terminal, and so on. This is very interesting. This allows them to build in actions into missions and makes units have to choose if they're going to shoot, if they're going to assault, if they're going to kill, or if they're going to do the objective, which is interesting for armies that would normally turtle and shoot things down. If you're going to have to give up some of that to hold an objective, you may you may lose the game even though you're trying to outsmack your opponent. But each action will specify when a unit can start to perform it, when it's completed, and any other conditions that must be satisfied. For example, some actions can only be attempted by units that are at a specific location on the battlefield. You can declare a unit from your army will start to perform an action provided there is no enemy unit within engagement range of it, excluding aircraft. So, as I said before, if you're in a fight, you could still do it as long as they weren't close to the objective. That is false. You cannot perform an action, in general, any action, when you are engaged. It did not advance or fall back this turn, so you can't fall back and then raise your banner. Aircraft units and units with the fortification battlefield role cannot perform actions. Makes sense. I bet people are going to try and do that, be like, my Bastion's going to raise the banner, but that's ludicrous, so they cover that here. The unit can only attempt to perform one action per battle round. Sorry. And the same action cannot be started by more than one unit from your army in the same battle round. That's interesting. So that means that raise the banner, only one banner can be raised per battle round. And then if a unit is destroyed, makes a normal move, advances, falls back, attempts to manifest a psychic power, declares a charge, performs a heroic intervention, or makes any attack with a ranged weapon after it has started to perform an action, but before that action is completed, that action is failed. Otherwise, that action is successfully completed. So, that's interesting. You have to, that other one that starts at the beginning of your turn to raise the banner, starts after movement, and then isn't done until the end of your turn, they give up everything. That unit gives up shooting, gives up their whole turn just to raise that banner, which is interesting. And a character cannot use any aura abilities while it's performing an action. the action has failed, then the aura abilities immediately take effect again. That is also very good. And then here's where they talk about unit coherency. There's a lot of people out there that says with the new unit coherency rules you can't daisy chain, and that is just false. You can still daisy chain. This unit coherency rule, the only change it makes is that units that are the small change is that it used to be 2 inches horizontally, 3 inches vertically, which means that if you're going up stories in a ruin, you will need to maintain a person on each floor, and that buildings in GW terrain were stereotypically 3 inches in vertical height, but with a 5-inch verticality, it allows for some leeway. They don't have to be directly above each other, and it allows GW some more artistic freedom in how they make buildings. It doesn't have to be a standard 3-inch. Some can be 3 inches, some can be 4 or 5. And people can still maintain coherency. But also, when a unit has more than 6 models, each model must be in unit coherency with 2 other models from its own unit. So the argument that people are making is that you can't daisy chain, and by daisy chain you mean like put all your guys in a straight line, and then because the 2 guys at the very ends of the line are not within 2 inches horizontally of another person. And while that is true, in a very straight, complete line, the 2 end guys are not within range of 2 people. All you have to do is have 2 people on the outside, both within range of 1 person in the line, and then the straight line. So the only thing that this has done to stop daisy chaining is that it's made all your daisy chains 2 inches shorter, because now you are required to have 2 guys at the end instead of 1. But every guy in the middle of the chain still has a guy to his left and a guy to his right, so you're good to go. Like, you don't have to worry about any of that happening. Bipe. I think that's a typo by somebody there. Then a unit coherency check. So each player must now remove models one at a time from any of the units in their armies that are no longer in unit coherency, as defined on page 198. We don't have the books yet, but when we do, it'll be on page 198, until only a single group of models from that unit remains in play and in unit coherency. The models removed count as having been destroyed, but they never trigger any rules that are used for models when the model is destroyed. Models removed because of this do not cause their unit to take another morale test. That is interesting. That means that if you do choose to daisy chain your units, you really don't want to be pulling models from the center as casualties. You'd pull them from the ends. But if you're daisy chaining your units, you're daisy chaining them for a reason. It is more important to have the chain than it is to have the coherency. But that is interesting. So if you did daisy chain in the way described below, you have the 2 guys on the end, the 2 guys on the other end, and a single line in between. If you pulled any of those guys, you effectively have to keep pulling them all. Because say you've got your 2 guys on the left, the 2 guys on the right, and the single chain of guys in between. You killed one guardsman, and you have to remove 1 guardsman. If you removed any guys in between, then you would kill the 1/2 because they're no longer in unit coherency, and each time you pull an extra 1, the next guy doesn't have 2 guys close to him. The next guy doesn't have 2 guys close to him. I guess until you get to 6 or less models, because then that rule doesn't apply anymore. So if your unit has 10 guys, I guess feel free to daisy chain with the 2 guys on the end, because even if you get 1 or 2 killed, you'll be at 10, 9, 8, and then you may lose 2 more, either morale or the coherency check. So, I mean, that's something to be thought about. You would remove models from units in your army that are not in unit coherency, and once all of the coherency models have been removed, if any, the morale phase ends. So it doesn't explicitly say, but it sounds like the unit coherency check happens in the morale phase after you have done both the morale check and the attrition roll, which has been added to this. And then the player's turn ends unless the battle ends. The next player's turn begins. Got it. So that's nice that they explicitly define when a turn ends and when another turn begins, because there's some stratagems that you don't know exactly when to use it, and it like weird kind of inner turn stuff. And then at the beginning of the next player's turn, that's when the command phase happens and everybody gets their lovely CP. It's also been thrown out the Lying in Wait Genestealer Cult stratagem. This is not a new stratagem by far. Lying in Wait is something that they've always had, but they use a stratagem for 2 CP, and then they use the stratagem when you set up a unit from your army that has the Cult Ambush ability as reinforcements. When setting up that unit, it can be set anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 3 inches from enemy models, but that unit cannot make a charge move this turn. So what you'd see with this is they have flamer pistols on some acolyte squads where every single one of them can take a flamer pistol. So you'd get a 5 or 10 man squad all with flamers 3 inches away, and it says you can't charge. That doesn't mean that you can't shoot. So they'd line up a line of flamers outside of your screen, and their flamer pistols only strength 3, but if you're against Imperial Guard, Guardsmen screens, Tau Guardsmen screens, Eldar Infantry, Tyrannid Gaunts, there's enough toughness 3 guys that a cheap 5 or 10 man flamer squad that for 2 CP gets to pop in, shoot, and get their points back immediately without being able to get answered. It's really nice. You're gonna see it if you play against Genestealer Cult a lot. You're gonna see it. And then the Goliath truck. You don't see these a whole lot. They were pointed pretty aggressively out of the competitive meta, but we don't know what all the point values are going to look like in 9th edition. So these guys may come back if they see a little bit of a point decrease, or even if they stay the same and a lot of other things see a point increase in relation to it. You may see these guys come back. They have okay melee characteristics, given that they've got the grinders on the front, and I mean, especially for a vehicle, they have okay melee characteristics. They have the decent weapon options. You didn't really see them shooting much because they were like a 4-up, 5-up ballistic steel army, so you didn't want to spend a lot of points on a mining laser that was going to hit half the time, especially with 8th edition, you being able to stack multiple negatives to hit. 4-up armies were hard-pressed to find a lot of heavy weaponry that they wanted to spend points on, because they a lot of times they couldn't hit. They were rolling for 5s and 6s, maybe 6s, maybe nothing. And if you can get a -2 to -3 to hit, you could shut down a lot of armies shooting. Then Emergency Disembark, which is a core stratagem, which means, it's not a Genestealer Cult specific thing. It's something that you'll see for everybody, and everybody will have access to it. Use a stratagem when a transport model from your army is destroyed. All units that are embarked within this model can be set up wholly within 6 inches of the destroyed model when they disembark, instead of the normal 3 inches, before the model itself is removed in the battlefield. These units are not affected by the destroyed model's explode ability or equivalent. Instead, you must roll 1d6 for each model you just set up in the battlefield instead of one model that disembarked, your choice, being destroyed for each roll of a 1. So it's essentially the emergency disembark we have now. And then they're destroyed for each roll of a 1 or 2. Units cannot declare a charge or perform a heroic intervention in the same turn that they disembark from a destroyed vehicle. Which is interesting because you'd be disembarking from a destroyed vehicle normally on your opponent's turn because he destroyed it, and you wouldn't necessarily charge in that turn anyway. But there may be some instances which your vehicle explodes on your own turn. This is kind of risky when you're talking about destroyed on a roll of a 1 or a 2, so you're losing a third of your models just to things getting out. But you may see it that if your opponent is trying to get tricky with you and he's going to wrap his models around your vehicle and then blow it up in close combat, you can't get out into engagement range. And sometimes that 3 inches means that guys that couldn't get out of 3 inches were destroyed. So this will allow you your 6-inch move, which may get you further away and outside of combat. It may allow more guys to live at the cost of a higher risk of them dying from the explosion. So you're giving up the idea that only 18% of them will die, and you're saying, well, a bunch of them are going to die anyway because they can't get away. I'll make it a 1 or 2. Yeah. That's the Genestealer cult. They have some stuff that they've talked about for Genestealer cult and that you expected with Genestealer cult, but they also had some nuggets in there that was the 9th edition rules. So, Chaos Knights. We saw stuff come out for the regular Imperial Knights a little while ago, but this is the first we'll see of the Chaos Knights. Who are they? They're essentially Imperial Knights' chaotic cousins. They made a huge splash in 40k when they came out. The super heavy detachment. So it costs 3 CP or 6 CP. 3 if you only use mini knights, the little guys. 6 CP if you have anything Titanic. I think you're going to see personally that the mini knights are going to be the backbone of a lot of knight armies now. They're going to be even more effective than they were before. And I think that's because you're going to have a smaller board. It looks like every single time they release some new objective, some new way of scoring, armies are going to be moving around. They're going to bring a lot of guys to hold a lot of board presence. They're going to bring a lot of units to be raising the banner, to be holding these objectives. And if you only have 3 big Titanic Knights, you're giving up so much board presence and so much board quality. And they just released the Space Marines that came in the Adeptus, the new Indomitus Crusade box, the guys with the Meltaguns. So it's 3 guys. They're toughness 5. They have 1 Meltagun shot apiece, but if they all shoot the same thing, they each fire twice. So they get doubly affected by any aura abilities you have. They have a 3-up ballistic skill if you give them reroll 1s to hit or reroll 1s to wound. Their strength 8, d6 damage, and their power level was like 4 or 5. And we don't know exactly how power level in 9th is going to match up to points, but at least at first, in Warhammer 40k 8th edition, each power level was about 20 points, give or take. There's some rough math in there. But if that's to be like similar to this new edition, you're looking at about 4 or 5 power level is about 100 points. About 80 to 100 points that these guys are going to be. They only, from what they've released, they've only had the one option for weapons. They have melt-a-gun guys, which seems to be how Primaris are rolling out. They give there's just a giant row of Primaris Space Marines, and like, here's your gun. This is what you got. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about. You don't get a missile launcher or a heavy bolter or a multi-melta. You get this gun. There's your Stalker bolt rifle. Slap him on the butt. Send him on his way. He's an intercessor. Here's your plasma gun. Slap him on his butt. Send him away. He's a hellblaster. Like, there's no mix and matching when it comes to Primaris Space Marines. You get your name tag the same day you get your gun, and that's how they go. So they have these great multi-melta guys, and their toughness 5, which I think is another bonus to Space Marines. You could make a decent Space Marine army now that is not a toughness 4 army, which is crazy to think that all their bolt guns are all wounding them on 5s. It's really, really good, and it so far it's been the Eliminators, I believe is what they're called. But they're old school Devastator equivalent in the new guys with the melt-a-guns. And the bikes are toughness 5, 4 wounds apiece. And another thing that scared me a little bit is that I thought that those bikes, I was going to guess that they're around 100 points a model, because it doesn't look like the guns mounted on the front are regular bolters. They have the side kind of exposed ammo caches, which make them look like heavy bolters, or at minimum those upgraded Stalker bolt rifles. So if you're looking at 2 twin link Stalker bolt rifles, 4 wounds at toughness 5, and 4 attacks apiece with the chainswords on the charge, because they get devastating charge, the extra attack for the chainsword, and 2 attacks base, you're looking at a devastating model on the tabletop. And I think I'm going to be way over on their point cost. They're not going to be 100 points a model, because GW released what their combat patrol or 25 power level was going to be, and they showed certain armies that would be included in 25 power level. In the Indomitus Crusade box, it was a character, 2 close combat units, 1 regular, 1 with the shields, and then the bikes, all for 25 power level. So even if the bikes were the lion's share, which I believe they would be, a big share of that 22 to 25 power level, that still only puts them at like 150, maybe 200 points for the unit. And that is insane. 66 points for that is so gross. And then, just to dial it back a little bit to those Melta guys, the bikes are great for White Scars. They're great for, depending on what kind of bolt guns they get, they're great for Imperial Fists. They're great for like Ravenwing, for Dark Angels. But those Melta guys, it screams Salamanders to me. They have Melta stratagems for days with the Salamanders to help them with damage. And if for 100 points, you're putting out 24-inch, 6 Melta shots, re-rolling 1s to wound or 1s to hit for auras, and like, you're taking down a knight, and a knight's already in the high 300 point round. Like, and you're doing it reliably, because you can spend a couple CP and don't put them on the field. Have them pop out turn 2, turn 3, and within 24 inches on our smaller board of something, and then just obliterate it. They are anti-vehicle killers, those things, and they look so good. But we rounded that out. Back to the super heavy detachment. Mini Knights, definitely going to be the legwork. Or for Chaos, they're called War Dogs. the Armiger and Halverin Chaos equivalent. They're going to do the heavy lifting. What some people are saying is, oh, I don't want to spend 6 of my 12 CP at 2,000 points just to have this army, and that's fine. When your warlord is part of a detachment, those CPs get refunded. But an interesting thing to think about is that by having 3 CP minimum to 6 CP maximum and being refunded, that means you can't bring Little Knights at game levels that are below 3 CP total. So 1,000 points is the first time you'll see a mini knight. Because I believe the CP... I'm going to look that up real quick. Warhammer 9th edition CP per game. Grab the image. They did have an image. There you go. So, to show that Combat Patrol, and this is from Spiky Bits, I believe. Yeah, it's from Spiky Bits. So, you're looking at Combat Patrol, 500 points, 3 command points. Which means Combat Patrol, you can see mini knights, Armigers and Halverins. Even if your warlord is part of that detachment, you'll see them at the 500 point level. The 1,000 point level is the first point level that you'll see any big knights. Because even though the CPs are refunded to you when you have your warlord in the detachment, you need to have them in order to be refunded. So you can't play a knight at the 500 point level. And then at 2,000 points you get 12, which is what everybody has been seeing. And then they had the Traitorous Lance rule, which is kind of like the Knight Lance rule, but this one's for Chaos Knights. And then you change the last sentence of the Traitorous Lance to read, if your warlord has the Chaos Knight keyword, Chaos Knight super heavy detachments in your army gain the following command benefits. Select one of the following. +3 command points if your warlord is part of the detachment, +6 command points if your warlord is part of the detachment and has the Titanic keyword. So it's just saying that you get refunded your CP when your warlord's part of the detachment, which is great because knights historically have not had a lot of CP, or they've had to take Imperial Guard as a CP battery to generate it, and now they won't have to do that. You will see a strictly knight army with 12 CP to run with at 2,000 points. And I've been talking for a hot minute. So, looking at Chaos Knight stratagems, Encircling the Hounds. So, Encircling Hounds is a house Chromentis stratagem. Use this stratagem during deployment. Select one House Chromentis War Dogs unit, so they're the little mini knights, they're not the big guys, from your army. You can set up this unit encircling the foe instead of setting them up on the battlefield. If you do, at the end of one of your movement phases, you can set up this unit anywhere on the battlefield that is within 6 inches of a battlefield edge and more than 9 inches from any enemy model. The War Dog's vehicle squadron ability only takes effect when this unit is set up on the battlefield, not when it is set up encircling the foe. You can only use this stratagem once per battle. So, what it's saying here, and some people may say, like, well, why would I... They already have CP that I could spend to put them in reserve, and then they can come in 9 inches away on a battlefield edge, turn 2, turn 3 from reserve anyway, but that doesn't cost only 1 CP. That costs CP based on your the power level of the units that you're putting in reserve. This 1 CP here, sorry, I'm mirrored, so it's getting a little bit of an issue. But this 1 CP is actually cheaper to put a War Dog in reserve than it is to actually have them hiding in reserve somewhere. A bunch of influx of people. Hey, how you doing? I'm Brandon from Team Bad Decisions. We're just going through some of the changes from 9th edition, and we're discussing how that would affect the meta overall. We just talked about like Space Marines and the new Eliminator Squads that came out with their rules, the bikes that came out for Space Marines, and we're going through the Chaos Knights right now. If you have any particular armies you want to discuss or just talk about what you're playing, like feel free to throw them in the comment section. Blow up the chat. You're good to go. But I'm glad to see you guys here. So that was Encircling Hounds, and that's the end of the Chaos Knights. Now this makes me sad. If we look at the faction for Craft Worlds, I think some armies got they got great bonuses from 9th edition rules, and I think 9th edition overall is going to be a beautiful edition. I think from 7th to 8th was great. A great upgrade, a great streamlining of the game, but they streamlined some things too far, and some people were exploiting the vagueness of some of the rules. So GW tightened their belts, sharpened their pencils, came back with a more robust rule set. It'll take a learning curve to get a hold of some of this stuff, but I think overall it's going to be a better rule set for a lot of us to play in. These guys, though, unfortunately, the Eldar, I think got until their codex came out, it's speculation, but all of the rules that have come out so far give these guys the rough end of the stick. Now, flyers can no longer fall back from combat and still shoot. That's all of their vehicles. Eldar don't have things that don't fly. Their tanks fly, their bikes fly, and it all used to be that they could fall back and shoot. If they got charged, whoever survived could still fall back and shoot. Now, if they get charged, whoever survived will fall back and then probably get charged again. And again and again and again. So they're going to have to really rely on their mobility to stay away. Now, a benefit to them is that their bikes now are no longer affected by the -1 to hit from moving and shooting. So you'll see a lot more scatter bikes, where scatter laser bikes, for those of you that don't know necessarily what a scatter bike is off the lingo, a scatter laser bike is a jet bike that the Eldar use. It's a strength 5 AP nothing, but it does 4 shots apiece, and you can put 5 or 6 of them in a squad. So you get a lot of shots at about 32 inch range, something like that. It's been a while since I looked at the codex, but it's in that ballpark. And so those bikes already move fast, and they can stay away and put out a high volume of shots. Another thing that hurt the Eldar, especially in 9th edition, is that only one unit can fire Overwatch because it's a stratagem. So if you charge multiple units on the Eldar field, you're going to shut down multiple tanks at the same time. And a lot of their good tanks, it has been released that they're blast weapons, and you can't fire blast weapons into close combat. So as soon as you're touching things like the Night Spinner, for instance, you just shut it down, because it can't fall back and still shoot, and it can't shoot the blast weapon portion of its Night Spinner cannon at what's in combat with it. So if you've got a cheap disposable unit, you got some guardsmen you don't necessarily care about, it's more point effective for your guardsmen to just keep scratching the paint on the Night Spinner, making sure it can't shoot, than it is to do anything else, because that effectively a 600 or 60 point unit is shutting down a couple 100 point unit from doing anything. That was the Eldar, and some of the things that I think are going to be challenges for the Eldar in the future for 9th edition. Now, from Chaos Knights, we're moving on to the regular Knights, and it is shown that they're using the exact same detachment. So you still got your super heavy detachment, you still have your 3 to 6 command points, which means you won't see big Knights at combat patrol level, because that you don't have 6 command points to even purchase a big Knight, even if he's a warlord and even if it is refunded to you. you could only see mini knights at the combat patrol level. And then the super heavy auxiliary detachment, which will be 3 command points. And it's probably, you're going to see this to bring Mortarion or Magnus. There's a lot of Lord of War, like a Baneblade, where you're not going to put it in a knight's list, but it is a Lord of War that is accommodating to the army that it's being brought it with, and it's going to cost you 3 command points to use that. Now, it may be that you want to make your Warlord the auxiliary knight, like the auxiliary super heavy detachment, but you probably will not see that most cases, because I've played against Mortarion a lot, and I've never seen him be chosen as the Warlord because of the big target he puts on himself. He's a great model. He does a lot of work, point effective wise, but because he does a lot of work, a lot of people are scared of him, and they're going to target fire him down, and he's going to be a target priority. And when keeping your Warlord alive is important to you for objective wise and points wise, you don't want the biggest guy with the biggest target on his back to be your Warlord, because you're giving up those Warlord points competitively. So they talk about the war gear, Relentless advance. All of this was stuff that was part of the codex to begin with, still from 7th edition or from 8th edition, but the rapid fire battle cannon, they talk about it having blast, so it's going to be heavy 2d6, strength 8, AP2, damage 3. Now that looks like a great weapon, and from a range, it is a great weapon. 72-inch range is the board. They should just say, I can shoot you if I can see you, because there's no point on this smaller board that you can get away from a 72-inch gun. Heavy 2d6, when what you shoot at takes 12 shots automatically if there are more than 11 models in the unit, is at strength 8, AP2, damage D3, just deleting 12 guys. That being said though, if you have 2 rapid fire battle cannons and you get charged, they're blast weapons. They cannot be fired into close combat. Now, your knight can stomp. Your knight's not super worried about being in close combat, but knights are about, and a lot of armies are about being point effective with the choices you make and what you shoot and what you charge and what you do when. But knights even more so, because a knight army is running with 3 to 5 to maybe 6 models total on the board. So if you're starting with a number of models smaller than the number of objectives on the board, you've given up playing the objective game off the bat. Your opponent kills 1 knight, kills 2 knights, and you can't hold more, on the objectives. And so that means knight players have to come out swinging. They need to come out killing people off objectives, standing on them, not necessarily to hold them, but to keep them back. Keep your opponents back, keep your opponents off objectives, and keep your opponents from scoring, which is kind of how I play my knights when I'm playing them. The thermal cannon, its range is less. It's only D6 shots and it's strength 9. So against the toughness 8 targets out there, the thermal cannon's going to give you more damage, and at 18-inch range, it's going to give you a more reliable damage output. Also at -4, it's basically you're relying on the opponent to have a invulnerable save in order to have any save at all. So this thermal cannon will kill any light vehicles and most heavy vehicles if it can get enough shots off. So I've had games where my thermal cannons roll 1s and then I miss with 1 hit, like 1 shot, and it's feel bad, but that's what you get when you get an a D6 type of weapon. You don't know what you're going to get. Maybe in an average of a whole game, you'll see 3 or 4 shots a turn out of this. But when are you playing a competitive 40k game that goes more than 3 turns? So you have these small subsects, and you're going to have 3 rolls of this dice, and you're going to hope for a 6, and most of the time you're not going to get it. So I find thermal cannons, unless you have some stratagems to mitigate the amount of shots it gets, kind of on the lackluster side of things because of how swingy they are. They could be amazing, but if you're a model that's trying to kill other big toughness 8 things, what you really want to do is get them in close combat and either punch them down with the gauntlet or chop them down with the sword. So they do talk about the Trader's Pyre, which is the Knight Valorant, which is the Flamer. You get to reroll 18-inch Flamer, heavy 3d6, and you reroll failed wound rolls with this, which is nice. You're going to bring that kind of Knight that has that Flamer. Being able to reroll wound rolls on only a strength 7 weapon is choice. Downside to that is that Knight is probably a 450 point Knight in 8th edition as it stands right now. And that means with the point adjustments, he's going to be insane. And he's like, I think the power level will put him out of the it definitely puts him out of the 500 point range, but maybe he's like a 600 or 700 point model in 9th edition with a 25% increase. At 600 points, he's a third of your army, and he's 24 to 30 wounds, which is some good las cannons, and then he's gone. Then you've lost a third of your army to 4 good las cannon shots. Unlikely, but possible. So we're looking at some of these old faction focuses in the keep reading section. Now there was something that just came out with this Indomitus face-off units that they're putting out. This is with the Eradicator Squad, that Melta squad that came out with the leader. Now, this stat line is ridiculous to me, and we did talk about it a little bit earlier. 5 power level, 2 attacks on the regular guys, 3 attacks on the main guy in close combat at strength 4. Their toughness 5. So the Primaris bikers we saw were toughness 5. These Eradicators are toughness 5. Like, they may be moving the Primaris line to T5, and that would be huge for that army. So each of these guys get a bolt pistol and a Melta rifle. And the bolt pistol means they shoot in close combat with their pistols. They fight in close combat with multiple attacks. They shoot down effectively. Like, if we just compared apples to apples, this Eradicator squad with one of those knights with the Melta Lance, that Melta Lance is D6 shots. So it shoots between 1 and 6 times at 36-inch range. These Melta guys are 24-inch range. So it's a shorter range, but they are 6 shots if they shoot the same thing every single time. Still strength 8, still AP -4, still D6 damage. Every single time, 6 shots. Just shooting at each other, this Eradicator squad will kill that knight before the knight can kill this Eradicator squad. Because just that knight will shoot 1 or 2 or 3 shots. I mean, it could shoot up to 6. but even if it did shoot 6 shots, it's only hitting 4 of the 6. And it's only wounding maybe 4 or 3 of the 6. So at perfect shots for the knight, it'll kill the Eradicator squad. And then even then, it has to roll at least a 3 on its wound rolls to kill the Eradicator. Where these guys put out a flat 6 shots, they're going to hit 6 times. They don't need to bet that they're going to get a 6 on a dice roll. They get all 6 of their shots. They're wounding on 4s. So instead of wounding on 3s, because these guys now are toughness 5, which means Meltas don't wound them on 2s anymore. Heavy bolters don't wound them on 3s anymore. They get the Imperium, the Adeptus Astartes in their chapter. They get keyword Mark X Gravis armor, Primaris, and Eradicator squad. Now, chapter selections for these guys, I think you're going to see these guys in Salamanders all day, every day. They have Melt of Stratagems, they have Reroll Wounds, they get a they get a dice every turn to reroll a hit, a wound, and one other thing. So it's like they get to reroll a hit, a wound, and a damage dice on each per squad. So it's not per model, but you get 6 shots. You're going to get, 3 or 4 hits with a re-rolling one of them, so you maybe get a 5th hit out of that. Then you're wounding 4 times against a knight, maybe 3 with the re-roll, you're getting your 4th wound, and then on average you're dealing 14 damage. But then take that one you rolled and re-roll it with your Salamander's re-roll too, because you get a hit, a wound, and a damage dice. And then you spike it, so it went 6-1, 6-1 for your 4 dice for average. You spike that one into another 4, and you're doing 16, 17 wounds. This squad, in one turn of shooting, we talked about 100 points if the power level curve stays about the same, and about 100 points just halved, or more than halved, a knight. Which, if that knight is no longer hitting on 3s, he's hitting on 4s now. And yes, the knight could rotate his ion shields, he could get invulnerable saves, those all can still happen, and we are playing a game of dice, so anything could happen in chance. But the best thing that we could do is play the odds and look at statistics, and even if you do cause them to rotate ion shields, you have eaten up some of their CP, and you could have 3 Eradicator squads for the points of a single knight on the cheap end. You could have 4, you can't, rule of 3, you can only have 3 Eradicator squads anyway, but if you're just doing points for points, you could almost get a 4th whole Eradicator squad just for that one knight. And if on average, before you take into account spikes on saves, you're halving a knight in one turn of shooting with these guys, you're eliminating a knight and a half with 3 squads. Now, we are giving these guys the benefit of the doubt and the best case scenario. They're meant to kill big vehicles, heavy armor, big wound models. You get 30 orc boys into these guys, and they're gonna just evaporate. They're not point effective against hordes. They're point effective against big shooty models. But a Baneblade would just get demolished by these guys. And if you see a bunch of Eradicators against the table, it's going to be kind of a swingy game. You're going to either have stuff that's going to die, because the things that the Eradicator squad are good at killing are not going to be easily hidden on a board, and the things that or you just don't bring big stuff against the Eradicator squad, but you don't know that in a tournament. You don't know what you're going to be up against, and you don't know what your opponents are going to bring. So, long story short, I think the Eradicator squad's good. I think if you're playing Primaris, you'll see one of them, if not 2 of them, to skew the anti-vehicle, anti-armor but you're not going to see too many of them because you're going to need things that'll deal with hordes better. They are not an anti-horde option. So these are Crypto Thralls. These are from the Indomitus Crusade box on the Necron side. But the Crypto Thrall is movement 5, so it's a little slower. It's kind of on par with the Necron's movement speed. Power level 2, which means they're about 40 points for the unit. Weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 4, so average, okay. Strength 5, toughness 5, above average, very nice for those. 2 wounds apiece, 3 attacks apiece. So not hitting great, but when they do hit, they do damage. Scything limbs are a melee unit, a melee weapon. Strength user, so strength 5, AP -1. And Scouring Eye is a range 12 pistol, 2, strength 5, AP 2. Living Metal and Reanimation Protocols. They have the Bound Creation rule. In a Battleforged army, you can include 1 Crypto Thrall unit in a detachment. For each Cryptech unit in that detachment, Crypto Thrall units do not take up slots in the detachment. So that's interesting. They're just basically little bodyguards that run with the Cryptech and kind of protect him. The Protector's Aura. Any enemy models cannot target a Cryptech unit from your army with a ranged weapon when they are within 3 inches of a friendly Crypto Thrall unit. So their 3-up save will help. And it's definitely gonna, like, that doesn't mean, like, the sniper weapons can target a character even when they're not like when they're hiding within a unit. But these Crypto Thralls will stop snipers from sniping your Cryptechs. And then they have Systemic Vigor. Models in this unit change their weapon skill and ballistic skill characteristic to 3+, and their attack characteristic to 6 when this unit was in 6 inches of any friendly Cryptech. So that's actually huge. A 40-point unit with 2 guys in it that has 3-up ballistic skill, 3-up weapon skill, and 6 attacks. So these 2 little guys are putting out 12 attacks at 3-up, strength 5, AP 2. Things are gonna die when they get close to this. It's gonna be taken to lunch. But crazy good. So I guess that comes down to all of the new releases that have come out in the 40k Indomitus Crusade so far. We heard from a couple of you guys in chat, and I just wanted to take just a second out there to plug some of the upcoming stuff we have going on. Team Bad Decisions is a Monday, Friday, Saturday show scheduling. Our Monday shows are Competitive Corner, where we talk about mostly right now, with that 9th edition being at its height, the competitive side of things and what that means for 9th edition and the rules. Friday is a lore linguist, which is more of the laid back hobby aspect of 40k, and we talk about the story, how things are affecting the story, and what's going on with changes in that. And then we look at Hobby Time, which is our Saturday show. All times are somewhat subject to change, but you can look every week on our schedule, which we'll have posted right here on our Twitch page, and we'll also have it on our website, teambadedecisions.com. Hobby Time on our Saturday is like a little mix of everything. If we have guests that are from the community, guests that are from painting companies, from modeling companies, from tournament organizers, we'll have them on Hobby Time, which will be our Saturday kind of talk show. And Hobby Time runs the whole gamut of possibilities to talk about tournament play, to display boards, to types of models, to types of glue, everything about the hobby. If you're unable to catch any of us live, which some of you are, and we see you guys talking in chat, but if you can't catch us live, our YouTube channel is The Team Bad Decisions at youtube.com. We post all our old content up there. There will be a couple day delay, but if you miss anything, feel free to catch us up there. Or if you like what you see, feel free to look at the backlog, because there's a lot of playlists there that'll talk about, if you want to watch all the Hobby Time episodes for the last month, you can do that, definitely. And then finally, and most importantly, we couldn't do any of this without the support of you guys that are viewing us. So I want to say thank you to all of you guys that are out here coming to chat and hang out. We look at the last couple people. BYY9080 donated 100 bits. Victor Von Champ followed us since the last time we had a show. Frostbite resubbed for 2 months. Tater Tots for Dinner followed. Ed the Dread followed. And MW Campbell 9 received a tier 1 sub from Nurgle Matt. Thank all you guys. I can speak for everybody on the teams, and we really appreciate all you guys out there. So that'll wrap up this episode of Competitive Corner. I hope to see you guys here on Friday for a Hobby Time, and stay awesome, guys. Bye.